There's a theme that I didn't anticipate when I was deciding what to read tonight. There's cat violence that kind of links these two stories, for which I apologize to all the Cambridge cat lovers. First story is called Killing the Cat. And one little gloss because of my advanced age. It's set in around 1973. The war that gets mentioned is the Vietnam War, and Richard Nixon makes a cameo appearance. Killing the cat. The cat is just walking down the street when a girl cat steps out of a doorway in front of him, and he stops. The girl cat's dress stretches tight over the bombs on her chest, and the cat's eyes boing out of his head. The girl cat is wearing lipstick, and she is making the boy have the tickle in his belly, even though she's really made of bombs, and she's a cartoon cat. The mouse made her to kill the cat, but this doesn't change how it makes the boy feel in his pants. Before she blows the cat up, Gina, the babysitter, puts her face in front of the boy's face and says they should go outside and get some fresh air. Go out and get some fresh air means go to meet her friend Nicole and smoke in the woods behind the school. He doesn't go to school now because it's summer, only to the playground sometimes, and in the mornings to sit with other kids and sing along when the older boy and girl play guitars and talk about peace. Then they make peace signs with crayons and yarn and glue. Hippie camp, his father calls it. Don't call it that, his mother says. It's brainwashing, his father says. So what, his mother says. The war is everywhere, his mother says. There was a vet at the post office today with a hook for a hand. It scares him. Hippie camp, his father says. It is cooler in the shade of the woods, and the dirt on the path is soft and puffy. Gina, the babysitter, holds his hand, and in the clearing where older kids sometimes make campfires, the sunlight is green where it shines through the leaves, and gold where there are no leaves in the way. From the creek beyond the clearing, there is a heavy, weedy, wet smell. He is not allowed to go by the creek. The babysitter's friend Nicole is there. She is wearing the top part of a bathing suit and a red scarf around her neck like an outlaw. Her shorts are very short, and the way she is leaning back on the tree the tornado knocked down, her dark hair falling behind her, and the gold sunlight glowing around her makes him have the tickle in his belly. The babysitter hands him his army men in their cigar box and tells him, go play. He sets them up around the roots of the biggest tree, and when they shoot each other, he makes a pew noise and knocks them over. The babysitter and her friends sit on the tree that fell down in the tornado and light cigarettes, and Nicole tells how last night she got a hippie camp, and that's why she's wearing this goddamn bandana. There is a fat snake skin in the roots of the tree. The boy sets his soldiers up to attack it. His favorite army guy is the one with the bazooka because he's kneeling so he doesn't fall over so much. The other army guys fall over even though they have all their arms and legs. Vets are army guys who have come back from the war, his mother tells him. He sees the one with a hook instead of a hand at the post office, the one with only one leg at the bus stop, but they don't scare him. His troops slowly and with much falling over advance on the giant snake. I go to hippie camp, he says, but my mom says don't call it that. The girls get up and come over by the tree, and Gina says, oh my God, gross, and pulls him away from the fat snake while her friend laughs, well, somebody had a good time here. Gina picks up his army men and says, come and play over here. Yeah, says Nicole, come over here and play with us. When Nicole squats down and puts her hand on his cheek and says, you're cute, his heart goes like the cartoon cat's heart. She asks, do you want a hippie camp? No, he does not, says the babysitter, but Nicole puts her mouth on the boy's neck anyway, and it tickles, and ow, says Nicole. Well, I told you to stop, says Gina. She is wiping her friend's spit from the boy's neck. At least you didn't leave a mark. The boy sets up his army men on the ring of stones. Inside the ring is charred and ashy. The army men have to be careful and not fall into the pit. When one does, he makes a quiet scream that goes down into silence. Ah. The way people scream when they fall on TV. So, Nicole says, how do you tell if a guy's a Republican? Oh, God, I don't want to talk about Republicans. You unzip his pants and check if he's got a crooked dick, says Nicole. Hardy har har, says Gina. And when the boy says, my dad's a Republican, the babysitter's friend laughs a little cloud of smoke, and she is laughing and coughing, her hand with the cigarette waving as if to make it stop. When she is done, she says, how about you, sweetie? Are you a Republican too? The army men scale the side of the pit. Only a couple of them fall in because he will get too dirty picking more of them from the ash, and his mother will know they have come to the woods where Gina is not supposed to take him. Nixon, Nixon, he's our man, his father teaches him. If he can't do it, no one can. There is nothing for them to attack by the fire pit, and he wishes he could still make his troops attack the fat snake. The girls pass a bottle of Pepsi back and forth that belongs to the boy's mother, and he is not allowed to drink it, but Gina can take one when she babysits. You should see when he's watching cartoons, it's like a little tent pole. His father set up a little tent with him in the yard, and they camped out until bedtime, and the porch light was as bright as the moon. I've got to pee, Gina says. Just go over to the school, says Nicole. I'll watch the young Republican. Gina looks at the boy and then looks at her friend, and hey, Nicole says when she is gone, do you want to see the hippie camp? She unknots the scarf and takes it off, and on her neck there is a bruised spot. Kisses don't hurt. You get kisses when you get hurt. Sometimes his mother kisses him on the place that hurts, but if it's a scab, she kisses his cheek instead. Would you like to give me a kiss? She holds her hair back and he kisses her on the bruised spot. And no, she says, like I kissed your neck. So he opens his mouth against her neck and moves his tongue, and she says, mmm. Her skin smells of suntan lotion and swimming pool and smoke. There's something else, he doesn't know what, but it makes his stomach tickle. Nicole looks down the path where Gina went. When she looks back at him, her eyes are shiny. Say, she says, do you want to see something else? Her hands are behind her back, and when her hands come back, they are holding the unfastened back of her bathing suit top. Do you want to see? Okay, but you have to show me something too. But when he starts to take his shirt off, she smiles and says, no, why don't you take your pants down instead? The afternoon is warm, Nicole's face is red, and there are little beads of sweat on her lip. When the boy's shorts and undershorts are down at his ankles, though, the air is cool on his skin. The tickle in his stomach burns, and his penis is pointing out. You were supposed to call it your penis, his mother says, not anything else, because cute names are not correct. Well, says Nicole, you're not a Republican at all, are you? It will be his repeating this that causes all the trouble later, his insistence. When his father says, as they watch the president speak on TV, that they are all Republicans, that no, he is not, because he doesn't have a crooked dick. So that when his mother says, where did you hear something like that, and he doesn't tell everything, he does not tell how, as a breeze breathed through the clearing, the babysitter's friend's nipples were like marbles of skin against his tongue, and she gasped and then breathed fast, and he does not say that, her eyes shiny and her smoky breath warm on his cheek, Nicole stroked with her fingertip the thin skin of his penis lightly, and it felt like an electric wire had come on inside of him, so that, like the bulb over the front porch that called him home from dust-sweaty games of kick the can, he was filled up with warm and golden light. But what he says is enough. I knew we couldn't trust that girl, his mother says, and she does seem well developed for her age, says his father, and of course you would notice, says his mother. And one day Gina and Nicole and their mothers and fathers and his mother and father all sit around the table and talk, and there is some crying. And when Nicole says she was just curious, the boy's mother says, well, curiosity killed the cat. But he hears no more than that because he has to stay in his room, and soon there is a different babysitter, Juanita, who is an old woman the age of his grandma, and who does not let him watch cartoons. Halfway through that was totally not intended to steal anybody's literary first fire. I have a second one. Is that okay? It's not as long as the first one. And this is an audience participation game because it's got two contenders for title, so we'll have a vote at the end, and you can say which should be the title. Maybe it should just be Killing the Cat again. But it's either smoke signals or Dirty Laundry. No child molestation in this one. That's not the first sentence of the story. Puffy Kitty had gone in the dryer. That's the first sentence of the story. It took a while for him to make this out through the tears. He had to tell her, slow down, to take a breath and say it again. When he finally understood, he laughed and said, well, did he shrink? She stopped crying then and stared at him. She asked how he could say such a thing and went into the bathroom and slammed the door. He should have read the signals better. In the basement, he could see just what had happened. They'd been keeping the heat down in yet another effort to economize. The cat, he was not going to call it by that stupid name. Hadn't he embarrassed himself enough, half to death even, shouting it around the neighborhood last time the little shit had gotten out and not come back all night? The cat liked warm places. It had curled up on the heating pad he'd used when he first hurt his back at work. Every time he went to take a piss, he'd come back to find the cat in his spot. Made sense then that when she took a load of laundry from the dryer, it would climb in. Then he imagined the wet sheets had piled in and trapped the little bastard. By his age, you'd figure he would no longer be surprised when reality didn't match up to cartoons. Still, the bloody sheets came as a shock. And the battered cat corpse clearly hadn't spent the cycle running like George Jetson on the treadmill. Jane, stop this crazy thing. He could see her coming down to take the sheets out, looking forward to their warmth in her arms, thinking about the newly, neatly made bed they would climb into that night, and finding instead the mess that used to be Puppy Kitty. Cleaning up wasn't so bad. He sprayed the sheets with Shout and dropped them into the washer with a couple glugs of bleach. Bleach for the inside of the dryer, too. The cat went gently into the good night of a black plastic garbage bag. When he knocked on the bedroom door and apologized through it for what must have been a shock reaction, I mean, who would really laugh at such a terrible thing? She let him in and let him hold her while she sobbed snot on his chest, so that mess seemed okay as well. But when she'd settled down some and blown her nose, she said she wanted him to bury Puffy Kitty in the backyard by the lilac so that she could always have him close by, and so she'd know that he was near the spot he'd always loved to lie in on a sunny afternoon. She realized, didn't she, that it was 10 degrees out and the ground was frozen hard as concrete and he'd never be able to dig a hole at all, much less the feet-deep hole he'd need so nothing hunting, weaselly, and sharp-toothed in the night could get at the cat's body. But she was having none of it. Puffy Kitty was precious to her, plus he probably would never have climbed into that dryer anyway if they didn't have to set the thermostat so low. He had to give himself credit. He'd given it the old college try, hammering at the likeliest looking spot beside the garage until he thought the pickaxe might shatter. His shoulders felt like he just played offensive tackle for an hour. He could fake it, maybe, say he'd done it, but the ground looked more scraped at than dug up. She would never believe the cat was buried there. Besides, she'd want to lower it into the hole herself, say a few weeping words. No way that cat was going in the ground, though, not until April. What, did she want to keep the fucker in the freezer beside the bags of frozen peas and the bulk-bought ground steaks in their styrofoam trays? So he pulled a couple armloads of split firewood from the shed and built a neat square stack. In the middle, he piled tinder and kindling, then a teepee of sticks before finishing the pyre with a level of logs across the top. It wasn't a perfect solution, but surely she would see the sense. He'd say it was a Viking funeral for the fallen warrior, or hadn't the cat been a murderous little bastard, scourge of the local birds and bunnies? When he'd dumped some gas over the pyre, he went inside to get a beer and the cat while it soaked in. The garbage bag would melt and probably off-gas something toxic, so he tumbled the ragged corpse out onto the reeking platform. A splash of gas so it would catch, a sip of beer, and he struck a match to his handiwork. The seasoned wood caught quickly, and soon Puppy Kitty was engulfed. Besides a little stink of burning hair, the blaze was just an ordinary campfire. On the big side, sure, but he had spent plenty of time sipping beer beside Bigger, back when he'd had time to hunt with buddies from the plant. Puffy Kitty started to pop and spit a little, and a roasting meat smell was wreathing the pyre when she ran out screaming and barefoot. It was all he could do to stop her jumping onto the flames like an Indian widow, and as he held her, she beat at his chest and screamed, "How could he? Bastard, bastard, how could he?" The Viking funeral speech was not well received. Before he got to the fallen warrior part, she tore away from him and ran back inside, still screaming, so that the neighbors across the alley all came out to their back steps or stared out from under lifted blinds. He waved and shrugged. It wasn't like no one had ever heard such noise from some of their yards, after all, and at least he wasn't out here wailing on a little kid the way some of his neighbors would to entertain themselves of a summer evening. They'd go back to their dinners and TVs, just like they all did, after every other neighborly fit of screaming and shattering. When she came back out, she was carrying the soaking, bleachy sheets and yelling that he might as well burn them too because she'd never sleep on them again. He dropped his beer, but still he couldn't stop her before she threw the sodden load onto the fire. That was their best set, a stretch of fabric he couldn't afford to replace, so he tried to yank them from the flames. The smoke was thick and acrid now, and the sheets were snagged. He built the fire too well. It burned so hot he couldn't reach in and untangle them. Plus, she kept wrestling with him and screaming, "Let them burn, let them burn." The platform atop the fire collapsed, and Puffy Kitty fell through to finish burning down where the blaze was hottest. You couldn't even see the cat now. It was lost amid the logs. The wet sheets were singeing here and there, but still he pulled at the edge, lifting them to let a smoke cloud rise, dropping them when she pulled or punched at his arm. And from somewhere, from a vantage point of warmth and safety maybe, it would seem as though the restless border tribes were sending signals, presaging perhaps, though probably not since the idol finale would be coming on soon, their long overdue and violent rise. Thank you. So, smoke signals.
Dirty laundry.
Dirty laundry over there.
Dirty laundry.
Dirty laundry. Looks like dirty laundry by acclamation. Thank you, Carissa. Thank you all very much.